Well met, traveler. Welcome to the tavern. Did you know that this magical place is where more than half of history's greatest adventures have begun? Before those adventurers took their first steps, they watched and calculated who would join their party. See that barbarian over there? He hails from the frozen lands. Strong, mighty, and full of wisdom. I've closed many a night with that one. They call themselves Matt Rossi. To the right over there, that woman, working on her tinkers and mechanical devices. An artificer of great skill. She is cunning and quick, and I've seen her bounce a fair share of ne'er-do-wells out of here before I could even step out from behind the bar. She's known as Liz Harper. And that gentleman by the hearth with a pile of tomes. Rumor has it that he is a powerful wizard full of arcane secrets. But around here, most just call him the Professor. Me, I know them to be Phil Ulrich. Oh, me, I'm Joe Perez. I'll be your tavern keeper. Welcome to Tavern Watch.
Hello and welcome to Tavern Watch, where we talk about all things tabletop and tabletop adjacent. I am one of your tavern keepers, Joe Perez, and joining me, as always, are some stalwart companions to hold back the ever-rising tide of autonomous darkness. First up, Liz Harper. How you doing today, Liz?
Howdy, I'm doing great. I have I have a pile of things to read that I've been too busy to read, and it's a real problem.
I feel that. I feel that at a very, very visceral level. And then joining us as well is Phil Ulrich. How you doing, Phil?
Good. It sounds like we're fighting off a robot army, and I've got my master plan, which is ask them how many R's are in strawberry. That'll show them.
Well, I mean, it's probably going to be a topic that comes up because we're going to be talking about other games here in a minute. But let's start with some time-honored tradition here on Tavern Watch with, I want to know what you guys are reading. I know what we're going to be playing soon, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But what's on your docket right now, Phil?
Let's see. So, RPG-wise, the only thing I've really got new, other than the giant pile of Pirate Borg stuff that arrived actually a couple weeks ago, which I didn't have time to read. It was kind of funny. So I backed their Kickstarter for their kind of expansions / also the starter set was included in it, Down Among the Dead. All of that arrived 2 weeks ago, and then I got an email this past week that it was shipping. So cool. I've also been reading Cairn, which is an
Cairn.
An OSR RPG, kind of descended from Into the Odd, but just more straight fantasy than whatever Chris McDowell's going for with that. It's been a really interesting read. For one thing, it's completely available for free if anybody wants that. I think it's Cairn, Cairn RPG.com. Completely free game, but the printed version has some stuff that's really... It's like most OSR games where even if you never play it, there's stuff you can take away from it. Really good procedures for running point crawls, whether that's dungeon or overland travel, and also a really good one for a really good section in their Warden's Manual on running games like Cairn or like, to a lesser extent, Shadow Dark or things like Into the Odd, where like character advancement isn't necessarily like most games where you're gaining some skills or picking powers out of a palette, or even Shadow Darks where you're like rolling and gaining an ability on level up. It's just like, I know a lot of players when confronted with that kind of go, well, I want a character who gets better over time. How do I get better? And there's a section in the Cairn Warden's Manual with written examples on diegetic enhancement, like giving players boons and things based on what they do well in the story, which is really cool to read. Which also, I know we always have at the top of our opening to shout out any interesting content creators we want to plug. I've actually just started listening to the podcast from the author of Cairn, Yochai Gal. I probably butchered that name. But they have a podcast called Between Two Cairns, which is a fantastic listen for anybody wanting to run an OSR-styled RPG.
Very, very cool. Liz, what are you reading?
I mean, it's more like what I want to read that I haven't read, which is I've got Blade 68, which just finished crowdfunding. We'll probably talk more about it later. But if you backed it, there's already an early access PDF copy, which is not finished. It's not fully formatted. It doesn't have all of the art in yet, but you got all the text in there. So that's on the pile to read. I picked up the Fallout RPG, the single player, the solo adventure, which I thought was really interesting. And if you pre-order it, it's another thing where you get the PDF early, and it's like I haven't had time to sit down and read these things. So it's, you may be aware that this group of people usually talks more about video games and World of Warcraft, and there have been a couple of things happening in that space recently that have kept me occupied and away from just sitting here and reading books.
Oh, so something happened? Huh? No, that's news to me.
Yeah, maybe.
And meanwhile, I've got on my docket a couple things. One, I'm brushing up on CU Space Cowboy, making sure that I've got everything in order for that, since we are going to be playing that in the very near future. And then I also picked up Bunnyborg, and I know we had talked about that before. The book was just too gorgeous not to buy. It really looks like an old ancient leather bound tome, like with this like Bunnicula looking thing right on front of it. So like I'm in for it. It's basically what if Morkborg was bunnies, that type of thing. So, you can't go wrong with that. And then I'm trying to catch up a little bit on the latest update from DC 20. So DC 20, we talked about it before, is a passion project by essentially a solo developer to make a better D&D, with D&D as sort of the framework, basically making it even better. There's been a ton of updates on it, and I know some people are a little upset because the Kickstarter for it was way back in 2024, finished and everything else, and the game's still not out yet, because turns out it's a lot of work to develop a game. But updates are becoming more frequent, and they just released a whole bunch of stuff with information on new leveling and new character development to try to make them feel a little more robust and a little more basically give players more agency. So I'm excited to see that, he continues to move forward and everything there. It should be good. And hopefully we'll get more releases from it later on this year. I think we're on release 10.5 or beta 10.5. So it's gone through a lot of iterations. So yeah, I don't know. Hopefully. And then of course I am looking forward to running CU Space Cowboy, which for those of you at home that may not know, it is essentially Cowboy Bebop, but with the serial numbers filed off, because as much as I like the Cowboy Bebop TTRPG book is a beautiful, beautiful book, I have no desire to run the official system. I will run this all day long because it makes way more sense, because it's a lot closer to Polymorph than anything else. Is there anything that you guys are looking forward to, or that you're currently playing, that you'd like to bring up?
I've been, for the first time in 25 years, learning how to play Magic the Gathering again.
Ooh.
I played back in 7th grade, which for people who want to put that timeline together on your own was around like immediately after 4th edition came out, because some of my friends got me a 4th edition starter for my birthday that year, and it kind of consumed my friend group for about a year, and then we all just kind of stopped playing all at once because we were in 7th and 8th grade and had no money.
That's definitely a problem.
Yeah, and I've done like an occasional draft since then, but then like in more recent years, when the Commander format has taken off, that format really interests me, and I discovered that my friendly local game store has a Commander night on Thursdays when I'm not usually doing anything else. So I picked up a couple of the pre-cons that they had set up there, and I've been me and my wife have been learning how to play Magic with each other and the official rules, because I think she played in high school for a little bit, so we're both 20 plus years out of date. But it's been fun. I'm enjoying it quite a bit. I've already started sourcing cards from my store for another deck that I net decked somewhere and I kind of want to try. But it's been nice to kind of feel that. So I used to be a fairly competitive Android Netrunner player, and unfortunately when Fantasy Flight stopped producing the game, and Null Signal took it over. Unfortunately, simultaneously, the Netrunner scene in Cincinnati kind of completely dried up and blew away. So I've been kind of missing that cardboard flopping shaped hole in my life, and so I'm kind of hoping that if I can get up to speed to where I'm not completely embarrassing myself, and then just go make the casual Commander Knights a thing, that'd be kind of cool.
Well, I'm going to give you the best piece of advice I possibly can with this endeavor, Phil. Bear in mind that unless somebody has passed the judge test, they likely will going to get a ton of rules wrong, and you're going to be fine, no matter how right they think they are.
Yeah, there's the biggest change for me from 7th grade is, oh my god, there's so many more keywords.
They've actually, there's a lot of keywords, but they've actually gone through a good effort of like standardizing a bunch of them and like having effects that like group them down so that they are keyworded now instead of like 3 paragraphs that describe what it is to surveil. So like,
it's also nice to not see like cards that effectively do the same thing being phrased 3 different ways, because the idea of standard phrasing didn't exist like it did in the 90s.
They call it standard templating now.
Yeah, it's been really nice. On the RPG front, I am brushing up on Shadowrun 6th edition. We are having a session 0 in about a week to make characters. Currently looking at playing a kind of a street shaman type character. I guess we'll see when we get there. What everybody else has planned. And then I'm still running Fabula Ultima on Fridays. So.
Nice. What about you, Liz?
None of my regular games have kind of fallen apart. So I'm looking forward to playing CU Space Cowboy soon, and that's kind of it.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, sometimes you gotta have that bright spot to work, and then hopefully I can deliver something that's enjoyable for everybody.
Man, I would be playing games every week, but that's the challenge, is finding your 5 friends who can all show up every week and play a game. It's tough.
Well, that's why you just return to AI, right? No, we're going to talk about that later.
Oh boy!
Oh god!
Boy.
Well, we also have to get past the season where Liz is literally spending 5 out of the 7 days a week shoveling snow.
I think we may be past that, but yeah.
Knock on wood.
I mean, that's why I've been looking at more solo RPGs to check out, because that's the biggest challenge of playing an RPG, is finding a bunch of other people to play it with. But of course, you don't have like the chaos of other people to play it with in a solo RPG. You've got to bring your own chaos.
Yeah, and people, I know there's this weird thing where folks in the community tend to look down their nose at single player RPGs, but there's some really, really good ones out there that are very clever. Like, I mean, Rangers of Shadow Deep is another one that is just like, it's great. And there is a version of it that you can play with people, but like, it's got a solo focused gameplay that is just absolutely phenomenal. Scarlet Heroes, which is designed for old school D&D modules, off the top of my head. Go ahead, Liz.
It seems like that's a growing space. You're seeing more games, even big mainstream games, have solo play, some kind of solo play rules, or other people, third parties, adapting games for solo play. So I'm just kind of seeing a lot of new things in that space. And, I kind of feel like it's because we all love our nerdy hobbies, but it's hard to find those 5 friends to play with us.
Sometimes it's also hard just to convince somebody to try something. And I know we've all experienced that. Like, I'll be really gung-ho about a game and like, I really want to play it, but nobody around me or nobody in the group wants to try it. And I have a regular, John, who comes into my shop, who he's like me. He like collects RPG books like Pokemon, and like he's very excited to like play them, but for a while getting his normal play group to try anything was very difficult. And we talk about it all the time, and now he like seizes the opportunities. He's slowly weeded them off of like D&D only, because they were like, oh, we only know D&D, we're comfortable here, we're not gonna move. And he's got them playing things like the Transformer RPG and the G.I. Joe RPG, and like branching off into these like D&D adjacent games, and then getting them to maybe want to try weirder stuff. And it's been really, really cool to see. Like, they just picked up I want to say it was the Conan RPG books that just came out, the new ones. Absolutely gorgeous printing, and he's very excited to try to get them. And also Planet of the Apes just released a book, or 2 books, I believe, in the last few weeks that he was also really excited to try to get people to play. And again, very clever system. Just, getting excited about stuff. One that I personally am excited about potentially is actually on the horizon. And it was because of the people involved in it. So I am a huge Godzilla fan. This is no surprise to anybody who's listened to any of our podcasts. In fact, we literally did a Godzilla podcast on Lore Watch. There is a new TTRPG coming out for Godzilla based off the IDW comics, which are, this really great continuation of like what started with the mythology set in Toho. And the people involved with it are three rather huge names in the industry of Gav Thorpe, Jervis Johnson, and Mark Latham. Gav Thorpe is probably best known for his time at Games Workshop in the early 90s, 1994, where he created the skirmish game Inquisitor. He was involved in almost every supplement book that came out, including most of the stories that were like put out for them. He wrote so many of the stories that, like, in the books that became these like iconic tentpoles for what the universe of Warhammer 40K actually became, like including things like 13th Legion, Kill Team, Annihilation Squad, even did stuff like the original Space Hulk novel. Like, he established the lore of this universe in a codified way that is just unheard of. And him being attached to this project is super exciting to me. Jervis Johnson also worked at Games Workshop, mainly on Warhammer Fantasy Battles, but also on all the other specialty games like Warhammer 40K, Blood Bowl, Epic, Necromunda, and Age of Sigmar. And again, he was part of that creating a universe, that world that just has continued to deliver amazing stories, and in my personal life, a ton of phenomenal just play experiences, and I've just been really excited about it. And then Mark Latham has been involved with everything from Elder Scrolls, the RPG that Modifius put out, to the Walking Dead games, to the Batman miniature game, to Star Trek tabletop role-playing games, to historical stuff like the Roman Empire and Napoleonic Wars. Like, insane amounts of like gaming credits behind this man, including Warhammer Fantasy Battles. And if you remember Star Wars Edge of the Empire role-playing game, he was involved in that as well. So like, it's got a pedigree behind it of some amazing individuals that know how to treat an IP correctly and know how to tell a story in a world that makes it feel vibrant, combined with the fact that you are fighting kaijus as humans in different different classes or different effects, not just Godzilla. I mean, we're talking, they're going the full Godzilla pantheon, because I don't know what else to call it. So if you can think of a Godzilla monster, it's going to be there, and you can fight it. And I think that's really, and I'm so looking forward to this. Like, this, I saw this and it was an instantaneous backing. Like, there was no hesitation. So I don't know if you guys have any opinions on it. If Matt was here, Matt would probably be screaming, "Give it to me now!" I can hear it. I can hear it echoing through the valley.
Probably. Well, it's. April 2nd is when it. When are they going to have anything available right away, or are you going to have to wait to get your hands on this when that Kickstarter ends on April 2nd?
My understanding is that they already have digital assets ready to go.
Oh.
Nice,
including kaiju versus kaiju battles.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Liz?
So when do we get to play this, Joe?
The minute it's in my hands. When are you
running a game for it?
As soon as it's out.
Yeah, the only downside of it is it's very much not conducive to online play without a virtual tabletop, because the mechanics of it is not dice, it's decks of cards. So players draw power from a chance deck, which stays in their hands. Essentially, their hands become destiny cards that you use to resolve actions and trials based off of like a normal deck of cards. Whereas the game master, or in this case, the deck master, controls what's called the crisis deck, which fuels a crisis clock that you have to play against, whether this is the monster's made landfall, or the monster has, on its way to the nuclear power plant. Now, the good news is that some virtual tabletop simulators and stuff like that are already set up for this, because of other games like Savage Worlds and things like that use decks of cards. The Malifaux tabletop role-playing game also uses decks of cards like this as well. It's already kind of set up for it. And I think there's already a mod being worked on in Tabletop Simulator as well. So I'm going to definitely try to play this game with you. It's just going to be a matter of making sure we have the assets available in order to.
Well, I know that even if they don't get a mod ready in time, Roll20 is one that I know definitely supports decks of cards and I'm blanking. There's one of those storytelling map drawing games, like the big one, uses primarily decks of cards as its Oracle feature. And I know I've seen and also played it online using that. So it would just be a matter of putting two of them into the play space and remembering which one was which.
Yeah. Well, that was my excitement thing, and I got to talk about it early, so I'm pretty much content. I do want to move on to the next one there, and I'm going to turn to Phil. There's some Neopets drama and news going on. What is going on with this, Phil?
Yeah, I think we talked about this maybe an episode or two ago, that the Neopets TTRPG, it was on Kickstarter a while ago, and a playtest finally came out, or maybe leaked. It's not 100% clear, but it came out, and Geekify is the company that had been handpicked to create this, because they have been working with the Neopets license for a long time. They make merch for them, etc. And for any of my 90s /aughts folks who remember Neopets, you know what it's like. For those who don't, yeah, it's essentially just a little site where you can raise pets and make them play games and interact with them and that kind of thing. It's not a real dark, deadly combat focused world. The playtest that came out, despite their promise that it was going to be a game that would cater more towards the style of Neopets, and there would be non-violent solutions to things, was barely a 5e hack. It was largely 5e. And 5e D&D, and there was a sample adventure that seemed to run very strongly against the kind of the vein of what had been promised. And on top of that, there was also some controversy on one part where the perks chapter, what basically feats for D&D 5e players, was entirely absent from the playtest document, with just a note from the author who would have written it that they had not been paid for it yet. So after this kind of came out and there was a lot of uproar over it, Neopets has entirely pulled their license from Geekify. So no more merch, no more tabletop RPG from them, which means the entire concept of a Neopets TTRPG is now in limbo. And they basically said, if you want a refund in your Kickstarter, you have to go to Geekify. You have to go to the people we just fired to get a refund now. Sorry.
Geekify has commented on that, and they've said, a lot of this money has already been spent on, 3 years of work on this game, or however many years of work on this game, because we've been producing this game. And on the flip side, Geekify says we had trouble getting approvals from Neopets. We weren't getting any communication from them. And so it's like, who do you believe? How did this playtest document get out there? Because the playtest document was 5e based, and 5e, I think 5e is a really flexible system that you can hack all sorts of things onto, but it's not a good system for games that are primarily not based on combat. But they were supposedly developing their own systems just for Neopets that was not 5e. So where did this playtest document even come from that had all of this old 5e stuff? And I don't know, it's a disaster. It's a disaster, and they raised $400,000 on Kickstarter, and refunds you're not going to happen. And if you are refunded, it's not going to be the full amount because they don't have the money. They've been working on the game and they don't have the money.
Obviously, we may never know the full extent of what happened where, but I will note that when the initial playtest document came out, their defense was not, sorry, we don't know where this came from. This was a leak. This doesn't represent the current state of the game. It was, this is the game. We know what we said.
It's so confusing. Everything about this is confusing.
Their defense at the time and their statements later don't quite match up, if you get it. So this may be. I'd say this one's probably dead in the water, like the Diablo RPG.
Oh, well,
coming out any day now.
Supposedly they're still working on that.
I noted at one point when we were talking about this on a prior tabletop that they had updated their website literally every year to state that it would be out the following year. But you could actually see all the different iterations online. So I'm curious if that'll happen again this year.
Yeah, I got nothing. Sometimes things just goes. I can't use the normal term I would use here. We'll say sideways.
Awry.
I will say the Diablo RPG webpage still says launching Q4 2025. So that does not look good.
Someday our ship will come in and it'll be Diablo RPG. Yeah, no. I'm not waiting for that one. My hair's already gray enough.
And don't hold your breath, because that would be fatal.
Indeed. Well, speaking of holding our breath and actually having something result from it, apparently Wizards finally decided to announce some D&D products for 2026. That's wild for me, because they've been relatively radio silent up until this point. So again, Phil, you posted this. You want to kind of kick us off here?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised it took them until March, but they've announced. So they've announced a few products, and there is an unannounced product at the end of the year. Ooh, spooky. For some reason, they've decided that they are going to go, mentioning Diablo, they are going to go with the Season of Noun strategy to, I'm guessing, also kind of guide their organized play, but also kind of indicates which books are coming out. The very first season of the year is the Season of Horror, which is bringing with it a new Ravenloft book. We've had Curse of Strahd revamped, Van Richten's, and now we are going to have Ravenloft, The Horrors Within, which is... I'll be interested to see what happens with this. It sounds like it's less of an adventure module like Curse of Strahd was, and more of a more player-focused guidebook like Van Richten's. But there's some DM things too. There's new subclasses. There's new NPCs. There's apparently info on additional horror genres. So if you want to run something other than strictly gothic horror in your Ravenloft, like if you want to run some cosmic horror, there's allegedly going to be guidance on that. So that'll be interesting.
I'll let Liz go, but I have umbrage here.
That's something that I thought was interesting about the Faerun book, was that, it had information about, okay, here you've got Faerun, here's a setting that's good for telling these kinds of stories, here's a setting that's good for telling, and it didn't just say, here's Faerun, here's what it's about. It said, here's Faerun, and if you want to tell a story like this is a good part of Faerun to set it in, and this is why. And, it really kind of expanded different sorts of backgrounds so you could tell different sorts of stories. And I think that's really interesting. It's a question of how well will this follow through with that.
I have a feeling on where you're going with this, Joe, but go ahead.
My problem is that, and don't get me wrong, I love horror in D&D. If you've listened to any of our previous one-shots and Let's Plays and stuff like that, you know that. You know that I love having those elements in it. It's been a big influence. My problem with this is not that they're doing this, it's that it's carrying the name Ravenloft while doing it. And I think that is a disservice to the brand and not... And a disservice to possibly what the quality of the contents of the book will be. Because when you ask the average person who has any inkling of what Ravenloft is, Gothic horror is the wheelhouse of Ravenloft. Like, that's what it is. Now, if you were to have a completely separate book that was just like, the myriad horrors of D&D or something like that, I can't think of a pithy name right now. But if you called it literally anything else and included those other types of horror like genres in it, I think that would be fine. But that immediately makes me concerned, because it's like, what content is actually going to be in here? And are you literally just attaching the name Ravenloft to it because the person making this decision put it into the AI bot and it said, we have a horror imprint's Ravenloft. It's all horror, and doesn't actually know what it is. Right? That's my thought on it.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, I thought maybe you were going to be upset like I was because they claim that it's going to be about cosmic horror and all that, and
Yeah.
and have that as an option, but then they have a stat block for Cthulhu. If you can fight Cthulhu, it's not cosmic horror.
No, don't get me wrong. Like there are entities and books that have done stat blocks for Cthulhu before, and D&D is rife with putting stat blocks on things that probably shouldn't have stat blocks.
Yep.
But it's up to DMs to make it interesting. That is a separate problem, or I should say, a separate challenge. But yeah, it's really more or less like I just don't understand why you have to shove the Ravenloft name, and it just feels like
I'm really hoping that it's just like a couple pages of guidance at the end, and that this mostly sticks in its gothic horror wheelhouse. I guess we'll find out. Some of the other domains of dread do kind of get away from that. Like, God, I don't remember. There's one that's basically like a barren meteor ruled by mind flayers. Like, that's not really gothic horror. That's something else.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Domains of Dread is what it's because it's in the Shadowfell too, and the Shadowfell, like if you were going
to the Shadowfell now, okay,
yeah, if you were to go to like all the different things in this, all the different demiplanes attached to Shadow, like if they would have called it that, like horrors in the realm of Shadowfell,
yep.
or just call it Domains of Dread or something, literally anything of that. Ravenloft butts up against that and would make sense. And like you could do the other things like the Mind Flayer, which is more akin to the cosmic horror stuff, and it would make sense. But Ravenloft is so hyper specific. Like,
well, if you want to see what that's all about, then that's slated for June. The next up, I'm gonna move on to the next one here because we could harp on Ravenloft for a while. But this next one actually addresses a problem I had with the Forgotten Realms ones, which was kind of nice. The second season of the year in autumn, because that's how WotC does years now, brings us 2 books: Arcana Unleashed and Arcana Unleashed Deadfall. Arcana Unleashed is a high magic source book. They actually go so far as to name specific returning spells that are in it. But Arcana Unleashed Deadfall brings one of my favorite antagonists from the Forgotten Realms that I felt got overlooked in the book, which is the Red Wizards of Thay. It is a companion adventure about a wizard war, presumably between the Red Wizards who are constantly backstabbing each other.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, this one is definitely more exciting to me, potentially. And it's definitely something that I would probably likely pick up. So I'm super, super into that.
Yeah, if only they'd timed it to coincide with the movie where the Red Wizards kind of played a fairly pivotal role, but only 3 years too late. And then
they're doing their best here.
they're getting there. And then the end of the year is the Season of Champions, and we have an unannounced book to go with it. We know literally nothing about it it's literally on the roadmap as to be announced. So there's at least one product in whatever the Season of Champions is, and I personally am hoping Champions, Gladiators, Arena, Dark Sun Book.
Mm-hmm.
Dark Sun Book.
Yeah, it's kind of.
They have done some playtest content that seems to feel a little Dark Sunny. So.
Now listen.
So I guess we'll see around October-ish, I think is when that kicks in. Yes, October through the end of 2026.
Now, don't get me wrong, I am a skeptical human being, but if they give me a Dark Sun book that's actually decent, I will snap purchase it.
Yeah, same.
I do want to note that they announced all of this not a live stream, but they published a video, and one of the things they said in it is that we want to do more videos where we get on and talk about things, which is something they used to do before they fired all the people who did it. So, I mean, if they are trying to go back to the place where they have communication and they talk about what they're working on and they talk about the ideas behind it, I am all for that. But we've had radio silence from WotC, and part of that is because the people who did that kind of communication aren't there anymore, which is a shame. So if we are heading back into a time where they are more communicative, they do reach out and we hear more about what they're doing, that's great. But like one of the big problems is, we kind of had a big shakeup there and a lot of talent left. R was fired, and we don't know what things look like now. Mm-hmm. The whole thing's a big question mark. Are they going to produce not so great books, or are they going to make some great new things? Because I know everyone wants to be down on WotC, particularly because all of that talent that is left, and plenty of other controversies that the company has had in recent years. But sometimes kind of a changing of the guard, a changing of leadership, bringing in new talent, sometimes that can result in cool new things. It's just, we have no idea. We don't know what the new WotC looks like. We don't know what their new books are going to look like. So it's just, until we see that Ravenloft book, it's just, who knows what's going to come out of this.
I do also want to say that they did push what they call a partnered content section as well, which I thought was very, very interesting, because it includes things like the Griffin Saddlebag, which is a wonderful compendium of magic items that were created by people not at Wizard for use in D&D, is getting a physical print book. Book one of it is being released in the spring, which is so soon-ish, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. There's another book about dinosaurs, which I'm sure I can hear Matt also screaming, "Give it to me now," which also plays a large part of it, because Forgotten Realms, not surprisingly, or maybe surprisingly to some folks, has an area, a jungle-ish area that is essentially a primordial region that has tons of dinosaurs in it. And there's tons of adventures in things that revolve around societies based around domesticating dinosaurs, which people completely forget about. And then you're getting another like monster hunting guide, which is this is a part 2. So it was I forgot what the part 1 was, but like they're starting to promote third-party content again, which that's been quiet for a while. Even when there was content being produced, Wizards and Hasbro wasn't advertising it. It seems like they are now.
I wonder how much of this. Go ahead.
D&D Beyond has kind of been leading there when they added partnered content. And they've continued to highlight it. And I think we're just seeing that grow on a larger scale. Like I've actually had conversations with Matt where he messaged me about something cool, something new in D&D. And it's like, actually, no, that's partnered content, just D&D Beyond sending it out on their mailing list. I think this is a great idea, because another one of the great things about 5e is I was just saying this, how easy it is to adapt to, how easy it is to tack things onto, how easy it is to write adventures for. So leveraging that third-party content, promoting all of those great creators out there, I think that's a smart move, especially if they aren't going to be doing as many of their own books, which they don't seem to be. They've got 3 books coming out this year, it looks like. That's great. Or 4, if you count the Arcana Unleashed adventure book. So it's just great to promote the community, because all of the community content is a big thing about what makes D&D great, what has made D&D the huge game that it is.
Speaking of being a huge game, and this is something that I saw in the notes, but didn't see in the notes. We kind of won. And what I mean by that is, so ever since the new edition of D&D has been coming out, everybody in the community, us here on the podcast, we've been referring to it as D&D 5.5. And the reason we're doing this is because the updates and the streamlining that they did with the book, again, the player's handbook and everything else they released, quality books, they're fantastic, but they didn't completely change the game like we were originally led to believe they would. And instead we got something much more akin to the transition from 3rd edition to 3.5, which is 3rd edition was a very bloated game that needed to be streamlined and have things sort of put back on the same path. And they did that, and was a massive success for Dungeons and Dragons at the time, and a huge boon to players. Well, they refused for a very long time to call it D&D 5.5. Well, they're starting to do it. Not just on the D&D Beyond, which is the only place that we've seen it officially located, but I've also gotten stuff about it in mailers at the shop about the products for this year. So they are literally referring to it as that elsewhere. It's just slow going on the rebranding for everywhere else. So I think that's really fascinating, and I think it's a It's about dang time, honestly, because it was such a stupid thing to me not to do it, because that's exactly what it is.
Yeah,
The thing is,
I liked their one D&D naming when they looked like we were going to get a revolutionary new game, but then when we just got when we got a backwards compatible sort of update and book reshuffle, yeah, it was 5.5, and I'm glad they finally came around to the correct way of saying things. So good on you, Watsy.
yeah, the books, the new source books from 2024, 2025, which calling it D&D 2024 when half of the books were out in 2025, also pretty confusing. They were really good books.
Mm-hmm.
They were good books, but they weren't a revolutionary step forward. It was compiling a lot of changes they'd made in other books that had been released since 5e. Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, Xanathar's Guide. It's just compiling those into one book. So instead of having to buy the player's handbook and the DM's guide and Xanathar's and Tasha's, and instead of having to buy 5 books, you can just grab the player's handbook, or you can just grab the DM's guide, and you have everything you need. You have all of the updated rules in one place, streamlined, neatly packaged, instead of being all over the place. That's great. Totally great. But Wizards of the Coast sold this as some kind of revolutionary next generation version of D&D, and it wasn't. And I think it got a kind of tepid response because of that, because they were saying, hey, here's this big, huge change. The early playtest documents had more significant changes. And then they came out with what was just, it's 5e, but streamlined, reformatted. You've got, the books are cleaner. You don't need to buy as many books and supplements. And that was not what players expected. So the 5.5 branding is way smarter. And I think the books would have done better if they branded them that way from day one, and players knew what they were buying.
Yeah, marketing would have been so much easier for them, right? Like, they wouldn't have had the confusion. And like, I saw a lot of this firsthand of like people looking at the books on the shelf and like, well, which ones do I need? Why is this one labeled this? Why doesn't this say this? And what do you mean this is an upgraded version of it? Like the massive confusion, whereas like literally that 5.5 moniker with a campaign, even if they had gone back and called the campaign One D&D, that's the name of the campaign, the marketing campaign for it, where the last D&D you'll ever need, but here is 5.5 is released, taking all the rules and accumulated knowledge of 5th edition and streamlining it and cleaning it up to make sure that everything makes perfect sense, suitable for all new players to onboard onto the product, and making it easier for existing players to use less books in order to play and run their game. Advertise it like that, as opposed to whatever the hell they did otherwise.
Would have been a better option. It's been messy, and I'll note that this does mark a change from when they did 3rd edition. When they upgraded it, when they put out that 3.5 edition, it straight up said on the front version 3.5, like it was a balance update, which in some senses it was. And it's like I thought that was a fairly well received effort at the time. And I guess maybe they've gotten away from that, and they didn't want people to go, oh, do I need this new version? Which is funny, because the confusion I think they were trying to avoid with the not using a version number moniker, they ended up creating accidentally with their marketing faux pas. So I think maybe this is a kind of a step towards this. Although somebody pointed out it's kind of funny now this is actually a different version number than the SRD, where I think they labeled it D&D 5.2. Like the SRD has a different versioning number now. So I don't know.
But I do wonder if this is kind of Wizards of the Coast taking steps in a positive direction. They're acknowledging that this is 5.5e. They're trying to have more community communication. I mean, it's a good direction if they follow through and they bring us some quality books. And I don't know the answer to either of those questions.
Well, speaking of knowing the answer to questions, I'm going to let Liz rant here for a little bit, because the next session also involves certain people in Hasbro. And, well, Liz, why don't you just kind of go ahead?
I'm kind of tired of ranting about this one because it seems like it keeps coming up. So Hasbro president Chris Cox is a really big fan of using artificial intelligence in everything. And that's not a super popular line with D&D fans, with a lot of content creators. I was just talking about how all of the third-party creators are what makes the game great. And AI, not a popular thing, because we want stuff created by real people, not stuff that's derivative and rehashed and that we've seen before. So, and Chris Cox has in the past talked about how, oh, we've got this great, D&D has a great amount of data to mine, like it's some gold mine to regurgitate.
Barf.
And it's gotten a really negative reaction from the community, including us, including me, because that just sounds, it sounds very boring. So he has recently commented that in an interview with The Verge, he said there are some brands that the audience, the creators just don't want it. So we don't even have it, AI, in our pipelines for video games, Magic the Gathering, or D&D.
This is a
which
lie.
I think
Sorry.
is...
I'll respond in a
listen,
moment. I'm sorry.
I can't tell you how truthful this is, but it's a good thing for him to say. But of course, Wizards of the Coast has been caught using AI art in the past, even after they said no AI. And we've kind of gone back and forth on this. Chris Cox has talked about using AI for DMing, for playing games, and how he plays tons of games and uses AI for all of them to help generate resources, sounds, and art, and all of those things. So this is something, he said it on the record publicly. I'm super glad he said it, that there are communities out there that do not like AI, do not want AI in their products. So Hasbro isn't pushing AI in these products. Now, will they follow through on that? Is this what's actually happening? Or is this something we're saying to, to make the listeners happy out there? I don't know that. And man, it's just so hard because Chris Cox constantly talks about how great AI is and how much Hasbro is using AI to make things. In this same interview, he talked about how in toy making, they literally have an AI version of Peppa Pig that they use to advise them on how to make new Peppa Pig products. That sounds like something made up. That is not something I am making up. That is something he said in this interview.
There is a reason why every department of Hasbro is failing financially except for Wizards of the Coast, which is supporting the entirety of the company on its back. They've done this, like they use AI to make the decision to move out of making like Transformers toys for kids in the volume that they were before and focus more on collectors. That's been working out gangbusters, hasn't it? They've gotten caught, and I do mean caught, using generative AI in Magic the Gathering products as well as D&D products, not the cards themselves that I'm aware of, but like in Keystone art that they then were using to make like playmats and stuff out of, where the original artist was like, I never went beyond this border. This is nothing I did. And they're like, oh yeah, we used AI upscaling. And they're like, well, that violates my contract. See you in court. Like, AI does not work for what they do. And they have not realized this. And it is very frustrating because they hold so many IPs that I love so dearly. Like the some of the decisions make no sense. And eventually the only things that are going to be left are going to be the products that people keep pushing back on. Because again, a Peppa Pig AI telling them how to make Peppa Pig toys. I haven't seen Peppa Pig toys on the shelf in any way, shape, or volume that makes any sort of sense in years. So I have no clue what that thing is doing. And I'm sorry, I could rant about this all day long, but like it's stuff like this when like you could literally just print money by just doing the work instead of cramming AI into everything. Every financial institution on the planet has said AI is not profitable in any capacity. Stop relying on it in stuff like this. It doesn't make sense. My God, I swear to God, this person like Chris Cox must have like remember the movie where the guy had the AI assistant and fell in love with her and it was voiced by Scarlett Johansson. Chris Cox saw that movie and thought, this is my life. This is great. I want this now. Like, that's what I get out of this. My God, I'm sorry. I'm done.
Well, this is the right thing to say. He's saying the right thing. If they follow through on this, and I don't know, because Chris Cox does say a lot of things, in Hasbro's latest earning call, Cox, which is only a couple months ago, I think, maybe a month ago, talked about how AI is being used to help with product ideas and just and how successful it was. He did say at the time that people make the decisions and people own the creative outcomes. But he was stressing how embedded AI was in just operations and really pushed how successful that was and how helpful that was. So it is good to hear him going from saying that to saying, but we recognize that some audiences don't like AI and we aren't using AI in those products. I hope they follow through on that. Yeah, because AI is just terrible at creative content. This is not, there are some things you could use this technology for that make a lot of sense, that it's good at. Creative content is not one of those things, and people keep trying to use it for creative content, and what you wind up for is art that's derivative, writing that's derivative, and it's just not interesting. And companies keep pushing for this because, it's cheaper to do than hiring artists and writers. But the content it generates is so subpar and mediocre. So I really, really hope they follow through on this and keep telling original stories, producing original art.
Oh, man. All right. Well, we're going to move on from that, I think. So, Phil, you found this one, which I think is also interesting. Matt and I have talked about this in the past on Lore Watch, actually. That there was an official Magic the Gathering RPG being developed by WotC in the late 90s. And Jonathan Tweet is apparently auctioning off the draft manuscripts to raise money for Planned Parenthood.
/ has auctioned it off. Yeah, there were actually quite a few posts about it on his Blue Sky where he just kind of ran it as a silent auction. But the list of designers here, it's Tim Beach, Tesman Woodruff, Wolfgang Barr, and Jonathan Tweet developed a unpublished, unannounced 1996 Magic RPG called Mana Storm.
Yep.
And apparently Jonathan Tweet just had it in a binder and auctioned it off to raise money for Planned Parenthood. And it raised $1,872 for Planned Parenthood.
Wow.
So you can actually see on his Blue Sky account, Jonathan Tweet bsky .social. There's lots of looks at it. It's very much a draft game. These are like printed out 3-hole punch things in binders, but you can definitely get like a cool look at a game in progress. Although it did have cover art, which I think is kind of cool. Like everything is the version 4.1, March 4, 1996. So they've been working on this thing for a while. Just a fun tidbit that turned up this week.
I wish I would have seen this earlier because I 1000% would have bid probably $2,500 on this.
Yeah, I guess he only ran the auction for a couple days. But they, it's very. It looks like some parts of the rules actually look like it was also going to be deck based, which makes sense based on Magic the Gathering. And apparently, although I will note, he is selling a lot of his other unpublished stuff to, again, still raise more money for Planned Parenthood. And because I believe he is moving into a newer, smaller home and trying to downsize his collection. So
convenient.
I know.
It's a win-win.
Yep.
I also think it's interesting to see just because I remember back in late 90s, I think it was either Dungeons Magazine or Dragons Magazine that had a whole series of articles that released about like doing Magic the Gathering stuff in terms of D&D, and it was really fascinating. And I'm wondering how much of this was an archetype or prototype for those articles. So man, that's awesome. Makes me super happy. And I want to move on to another topic here that Phil found, and Yeah, Exodus Tabletop apparently is getting a physical print. What's going on with this one?
Yeah, I guess I can finally remove my watch on eBay for copies of it to turn up for God knows how much. Renegade Game Studios, not WotC, Renegade Game Studios announced at Gamma that they will later this year be publishing the Exodus Traveler's Handbook and the Exodus Creature Catalog for the RPG in August. And then it sounds like they're actually going to continue publishing the Exodus line, which means that the WotC-owned Archetype Entertainment is working with another company to produce this role-playing game based on the upcoming sci-fi RPG headed by James Olin. So it's interesting because
confusing.
this is for people who missed our previous rants about this. Essentially, WotC, I guess, co-owns this Archetype Entertainment company,
Yes.
which has been producing a sci-fi RPG, think like Mass Effect scale, maybe bigger, headed by James Olin, who was previously part of Mass Effect, of designing that game. And they produced a physical RPG, and if you didn't buy it in that first release, it has never been reprinted, and there's been no info on when it would ever go back on sale, and it is the first actual look at the universe for the game in question. And we've kind of banged the drum of where is this game? When will we get this game again? And I was not joking when I said I had an eBay watch set up for the books to show up. And yeah, it's just interesting to see a company owned by WotC go to a company that's not WotC to produce a game.
I want to throw this out there though, because Renegade is a known name in the space. So Renegade, as a TTRPG production company, as well as they do miniature games as well, has partnered with Hasbro Games for a long time at this point. They are the ones that have produced things like My Little Pony role-playing game, G.I. Joe, Power Rangers, and the Transformers role-playing games using their Essence systems. Yeah. So they're used to partnering up with it. And so this kind of makes a little bit of sense because of them already having that relationship with Hasbro, and Hasbro really kind of just wanting to be an IP factory at this point. They also have an interesting pedigree with them as well, talking about the quality of games, because the Power Rangers and Transformers games are absolutely phenomenal. I have not played the G.I. Joe game, but it's the same system, so I'm sure it's absolutely wonderful as well. But they also do the current iterations of Vampire the Masquerade, as well as Werewolf the Apocalypse. They also have one for Hunter the Reckoning, I think, is also in production. They do the Welcome to Night Vale game. So if you're a fan of Welcome to Night Vale, there's a game for it, and they do it. And they also do Kids on Bikes. So they have a solid role-playing pedigree that is just really cool. And they also have these series of books called Primers, which we've talked about in the past, which are source books for very specific niche things. So do you want to be a geologist in a role-playing game? Here's a primer on how to be a geologist in a role-playing game. You want to be an herbalist in a role-playing game? Here's a primer on how to do that. You want to be a mycologist? Here you go. That one's on pre-order, I think, right now. But they make these incredibly cool niche products that remind me a lot of, and I'm sure Phil will remember this from back in the day, when 3rd edition and 3.5 were out, you had a lot of third-party companies doing specifically these types of books. The original Draconomicon was not done by, the original mass market Draconomicon was not done by WotC. It was done by a third party who produced a book about dragons and odd color dragons and gem dragons that Wizards wouldn't do at the time. This is where the unofficial original Diablo stuff came from, and all these other things. There was a plethora of them, but they also had things like recreations of 1st edition books that Wizards and Hasbro just never wanted to do. So you used to have the Fighter's Handbook in 1st edition. Well, in 3.5 during that time frame, I think it was Green Ronin at the time, produced a whole series of books that recreated that with the kits and specializations for 3.5. So here's the monk one, where that's where the Drunken Master came from, and the Elemental Fist and all this other stuff. So it's cool that Renegade's doing that now, and that they have that pre-existing relationship. See, this comes full circle to that third-party integration that they should be doing with the role-playing stuff. So I don't know, makes perfect sense to me. I like it.
Yeah, I remember that one of the best lines that I liked out of 3.5 was before we got a Ravenloft adaptation for 3rd edition, White Wolf had their Dark Fantasy Sword and Sorcery line. I think that may have actually literally been called Sword and Sorcery, which was just wildly cool, darker than anything you would get in base D&D at that time.
Oh yeah,
of course the base editions were just kind of just the generic setting. It wasn't even fully Greyhawk. It was just kind of extremely generic. So I just thought it was interesting that the greater companies sometimes seem to forget. Oh yeah, we have this money factory that already makes RPGs. But maybe they asked the Exodus AI who they should talk to about publishing the Exodus RPG. But
they could have asked Peppa Pig.
They could have asked Peppa Pig. But regardless of how this gets out there, I'm just glad that this RPG hasn't been shot out of the world and seen end of life. Maybe we can get a hold of it someday soon. August, it sounds like. So
well, it's going to be an instant purchase for me. That's all I know.
Yeah, I'm not risking it. I'm not missing it this time.
No, I am not. Speaking of some other books that are coming out that people might be interested in, just to quickly move it in, Children of Time, which is a science fiction novel from 2015 that you may have read from Adrian Tchaikovsky, is getting a TTRPG book. Which is really kind of cool. The story about it is essentially humans escaping a dying Earth, coming collision with another species, essentially, and are trying to figure out what to do. It's that old chestnut. But it did win an Arthur C. Clarke Award for Best Science Fiction Novel in 2016, and it is a very interesting book. And I think it's really cool that it is getting a game set in that universe of where artificial intelligence is not necessarily your friend. And it seems like this is appropriate timing for a book like this. Just saying. I'm super excited about that. And I'm looking forward to more information about that as it gets closer. And then the last one that I want to mention before we get to the Kickstarter roundup is that, you want to punch Nazis? You want to punch them in their futuristic faces? Well, I got good news for you,
man. Every day, man.
Wolfenstein is getting an official tabletop role-playing game, which I think is about time. So it's not much is known about it beyond that. It's being produced by Modiphius. Modiphius is the minds behind Dune, Fallout, Star Trek Adventures, the tabletop role-playing games, which uses a 2D20 system, which is very good at doing cinematic combat sequences, which is perfect for a Wolfenstein role-playing. I think that's really cool. I think that's really neat. And this is also going to be probably an instant purchase for me because, man, do I need this in my life. I don't know if you guys have anything to add to that. Otherwise, I'm going to kick it over to Phil and have him take it through the Kickstarter roundup.
But we can actually throw Wolfenstein in there because their crowdfunding campaign launches in fall 2026.
Yes.
So something to look forward to. Yep, just grabbed a few interesting Kickstarters that I saw here. We already mentioned the Godzilla role-playing game from IDW. That one ends on April 2nd, fully funded already. We mentioned, Liz mentioned in a prior episode, the adaptation of Naomi Novik's Temeraire series about the what if dragons were in the Napoleonic Wars. So that one is fully funded, ends on March 26th. That one sounds really cool, including rules for playing as a dragon, not just for being I believe the central characters in those it's mentioned in a few places are the British Air Force, except they have dragons this time. So you can both play as characters and as, we're talking dragons big enough to like airship carrier sized dragons. This is what you're carrying your army around on. So that's going to be interesting to see how they handle that. But I trust Magpie. And also that also means it's just going to be a lavishly decorated affair. All the extras look really nice.
I want it.
Yeah, I also want it. I've actually picked up Temeraire, the first Temeraire book. I haven't started reading it yet, but I'm interested in this series now because this is kind of I really like alternate history as a genre conceptually, but so much of it is just what if the Nazis won, and I don't really need to read about that.
Yeah.
So this is just what if dragons were around in the Napoleonic Wars era is actually something interesting to me. But we'll move on to another one here, Beyond the Woods, which is actually an Irish mythology-inspired campaign setting for the recently fully released Legend in the Mist. 600% funded. It ends on March 26th. This has actually been getting plugged by Son of Oak, who are not producing this. I believe this is the second third-party setting I've seen for Legend in the Mist. A game that is still waiting for the printers to ship the books to the U.S. So a lot of excitement around that. We played it on Tavern Watch a while back. Go back and find that. It was a big success, I thought. I've been kind of toying with running it again because what I need is another game to run.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, obviously. The Agate is funding a third edition of Seventh Sea, a classic role-playing game created by John Wick, not that John Wick. This one is also extremely funded and ends April 10th. Seventh Sea is kind of a, let's call it a cinematic swashbuckling heroic TTRPG set on not quite Earth. And
Thea,
it's,
I believe.
Yeah, Thea, yes. And this one also offers like a few different ways to play, which I thought was cool. There's one which is kind of the standard way of playing 7th Sea, and there's one that delves more to the magical side of it, and one that gets more into like mad science and technological advancement in Thea. It's a really cool idea to do it. One of my favorite gimmicks from the second edition is that since you are a hero, you cannot die unless you choose to. And if you choose to, it will be for an interesting and meaningful reason. Kind of a cool way to handle being a hero. It's also worth noting that the previous edition, a decade ago, was the first $1 million TTRPG Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a fun fact for you. Blade 68 just finished its run on BackerKit. Liz talked about that. Advances the timeline in the Duskfall setting of Blades in the Dark to the year 968 and presents it as kind of a retro futuristic 1960s style lens. So like you've still got, your weird technology in Duskfall, you've still got ghosts wandering around, but you've also got everything is mod and retro looking and kind of cool. I know Liz is very excited about this. I don't think there's any way we'll get away from running that.
Well, I mean, the only way we'll get away from running that is if it's just difficult to run.
Well, I think so I've stated before for the record, I think the first edition of Blades was really rough at telling you how to run Blades as a game. I think that every Blades-based game that has come out since then has improved
so much
on
better.
that.
Yeah.
I have no doubt that Blade 68 probably incorporates some of those changes.
Almost assuredly.
Definitely. Acheron Games recently funded a game called Pumpkin Spice based on an artist Sims, S-I-M-Z. 13,000% funded, over 1 million euros. A cozy magical RPG game with a Kiki's Delivery Service vibe set in a modern witch-run coffee shop where you were running a coffee shop and also protecting a fount of magic from those who would do it harm. This one, I got nonstop advertisements for this in my social media feeds. Campaign is over, but they're still taking late pledges. And also Idols of the Neon Dark, which if you want to play K-pop Demon Hunters RPG, here you go. That's pretty much what this is.
Also massively funded. I think the goal was 13,000, and we're sitting at 130,000. Yeah.
I am not surprised at all. Yeah, $129,000 out of a $13,000 goal, and it still goes till April 9th. Yeah, Pop Idols fighting monsters in a Neon City, compatible with D&D 5e. Also, there is a very cool baby dragon 3D printed model that you can get if you back it early. So. And that is just a small roundup of things that we found on Kickstarter this week. Y'all got anything that we didn't get in the notes that you want to plug from there, from Kickstarter, BackerKit, or anywhere else?
No, because I'm already out of I've spent enough money this week, and I don't need any more. And I'm not gonna lie, I selfishly, and maybe not so selfishly, but mostly selfishly, use the store as a way to do some of this stuff because a lot of these have retailer levels. And yeah.
Look, it just makes sense. You get what you want. The store gets product that they can sell. Everybody wins.
It's a win-win-win.
I see no harm in that. Yeah. So the good news is a lot of these are either ending within the next month, or and we know there's more coming next year. So I like to think of these as a gift to my future self, unless you back the Neopets RPG, in which case I'm sorry.
Lots of,
It sounded promising, but here we are.
and yet here we are. Well, I think that's going
to.
God,
Sometimes that's how it goes. Sometimes that's how it goes with Kickstarter.
Well, I think that's going to do it for today, friends. I do want to remind you that Blizzard Watch and everything we do is made possible due to the generous contributions at patreon.com/BlizzardWatch. Your continued support means that this podcast siting community is able to thrive and grow. Blizzard Watch supporters enjoy exclusive benefits like early access to our podcast, a better chance at having your question answered on our podcast, or the Q&A ads-free site experience. If you have questions for this or any of our podcasts, please be sure to send those in to podcast@blizzardwatch.com. We ask that you specify what show it's for, as well as any special pronunciation of your name. And then if you don't want to send us an email, you can hit us up on Discord. We have the Q&A podcast questions channel open for everybody. Same rules apply. And if you are a Patreon subscriber, you have access to the Patreon Q&A podcast channel, where we tend to look there first as a way of saying thank you for helping us keep the lights on. Friends, thank you very much for joining us on this wonderful journey through the ups and downs of the industry. And we will see you next